this video is going to ruffle some feathers. I'm judging your historical opinions, and a lot of your historical opinions are actually very unpopular. So we're going to get straight on with it because I don't want my cancellation to be delayed any further. A few weeks ago, I asked you guys on my lovely Instagram page that you can follow here, I asked you guys, what are some of your historical unpopular opinions that you have? Because I want to either judge them, correct them, or agree with you. And I got about 60. Now, I've had to contain that because that's a lot to fit in one video, so I can't really do all of them. I've tried to fit as many in as I can, so thank you to those who managed to submit and get in the video, but thank you for those who also did submit some. I will also have another article that's all lovely here for you. They're linked down here, so please do go check them out down here. I spend a lot of time on them, so thank you so much. We're going to start off with our first one, and it's from Globetrotting and Gastronomy. What a name, by the way. And it says, Britain invented concentration camps during the Boer War. The Nazis took that much further. There's two parts of this question, and let's start with the end, because I think that's very concise to deal with. The Nazis did take concentration camps, no matter where they came from, and took them to the absolute extreme. So I will agree with you on that. They went absolutely batshit with it. Let's start with defining what a concentration camp actually is, so we can then see what defines it, and we can see what countries use them. So the LBI defines the concentration camp as a place where a large number of inmates, often those deemed political enemies or members of ethnic or religious minorities, are confined against their wills and under guard, usually without being charged of a crime. Concentration camps have been used by many different nations, particularly quite imperial nations. But I'm going to start off with the elephant in the room, and this is going to piss some people off. America did use concentration camps in the 1830s with the Cherokee tribe. They called them emigration camps, but they still contained people in very inhumane ways before resettling the Native Americans in Oklahoma. And it fits all the checkboxes of a large group of inmates, political prisoners, not kept in very good conditions, usually quite prejudice reasons. But the first country to use what we now know as concentration camps was actually Spain in Cuba. This was during the 10 Years' War between 1868 and 1878. So there was 10 years there where the Spanish army in Cuba put prisoners in what they called concentration camps. So they kind of got away with the name there, and it's not particularly what you think of, but yeah, they did. They were the first ones to use them. There were also camps in the Philippine-American War as well as the Second Boer War. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. I say that word wrong every single time. I don't know if it's Boer or Boer, so we're going to go with Boer. I'm very sorry about that. During the Second Boer War, there were 34 camps that were established by the British to put people in South Africa, and the camps are very well known as being horrendous, and that is the reason why they are kind of considered the first ones, because they're the ones that stick in public memory quite a lot. But we also had the Germans in what is now Namibia. This links to the idea of there's quite a lot of kind of philosophers and historians that say, well, because Germany was capable of making concentration camps in Namibia in their colony, that they already had the means, or they call it the continuity thesis. I don't completely believe it, because we shouldn't allow our ancestors to dictate what we can do. But I'll put it up on screen here. I don't really get it. This is what they said, not me. I'm just relaying the information. A couple of websites I use the Smithsonian, and they said that it was created by the Spanish, and then they talk about the British and the Germans later, because they are big colonial nations that use these camps in very horrific ways. The problem is, this is why I hate AI. AI is full of excuse my language. When you type up who created concentration camps, the first country that comes up is Britain. They talk about the Boer Wars, and they talk about what they did, and they were horrendous. Okay, then you scroll down and actually see that it says the Spanish did it. Don't take what it says at first value, like look into it, because it says the British, because those are the most well-known ones, and then it goes into the Spanish ones. And there's also an excellent article by the Observation Post that I will link down below. My second argument that someone's posed. I'm actually grouping two together. And this one's from Irish History Dave, and it says, the study of the Roman Empire is ultimately dull and repetitive. And then Emma says, the Tudors are the most boring part of British history. Now, as a World War II historian, I'm going to be completely biased, and I'm going to say, yeah, they're not my favourite things to learn about, but I do think they're really, really important. I recently read a book, it's literally here, it's this one here, it's The Shortest History of England. Really good at summarising the Roman involvement in Britain and how literally to this day, which I find really interesting, we can map out the geographical areas where the Romans were, where their villas were, where the roads are, to the economic epicentres of Britain. And also you can see the Tory Labour voting differentiations and geographical areas. You can literally link them to where the villas were created under the reign of the Romans. I find that super interesting. But to name a few things that these two periods are important for, I'm going to play devil's advocate and I'm going to say they are worth learning about, but I will get on to why I completely understand your arguments. Like the Romans, like I said, they had huge advances in technology, aqueducts, social structures, gods. Rome as a whole, I'm sure 99% of people who claim to be historians or love history will go on holidays to Rome. Also, founding of British history. We can date a lot of our history back to Romans. Things like Hadrian's Wall, a lot of tourism. If you've ever been to Chester, you will know how important the Romans were there. It's cool things like that. Also, things like the Tudors united the country under Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, ending the Wars of the Roses. We had Henry VIII and every atrocious thing that he did. Oh my god. Bankrupting the country, dissolution of the monasteries, getting in fights with other places in Europe they probably shouldn't be getting in fights with. I mean, Mary first, Elizabeth I, just incredible monarchs that are very, very interesting to look at. But I understand why it's boring, and I'm actually going to relate to social media on this one. I love working on social media. I absolutely love it. But my goodness, I'm going to whisper this. I am a little bit bored of being inundated with things about Anne Boleyn. I get it. She was cool. But it's a lot. And I'm sorry. An interesting character, don't get me wrong. But there are only so many books, articles, films, documentaries I can read about Anne Boleyn. I'm sorry. There's a lot. There's so much investment going into Anne Boleyn. Let's put it in other areas. One recent discovery that's come out, Black Tudors, talking about how there actually was a very strong presence of black people in the court of Henry VIII. But we don't talk about it. Things like that needs investment. And I understand why it's frustrating to see people go, Henry VIII, Anne Boleyn, da-da-da-da-da. When on one side of it, you've got the Plantagenets, and then you've got on the other side of it, the Stuarts. I'm like, these are really, really interesting periods of history that I want to know about, but I don't see enough people talking about on history. So if you want to start a history account, please talk about one of those, because I would love to learn about them. But I get it. People saying, what's the Roman Empire? Everything relates back to the Romans. Everything relates back to the Tudors. I get it. I get why it's boring. It is just, we have to recognise their importance before we can go, yeah, I'm bored. Get my laptop back up for this one, because this one actually has historical facts based in it. Chris has said that the Blitz spirit narrative is a myth, and I completely 100% agree with you there. The Blitz spirit, if you don't know what it is, picture East London. I currently live in East London, and if you don't know, the Germans bombed the hell out of it. It's a very strong area when it comes to things like industries and docks, and the Germans were like, okay, we're going to bomb it because that's a English strong point, completely understandable tactic, but it killed tens of thousands of people. And there's this narrative that absolute tragedy that everyone experienced brought everyone closer together, and there was a community spirit, and there was a rebirth in community afterwards. And while, yeah, sure, that's romanticised because people needed to keep up morale, so like the BBC were going around and going, everyone rejoice, look at this community hall in East London, it looks wonderful, doesn't it? And then you've got the Queen Mother going, after Buckingham Palace was bombed, I looked the East End in the eye, and everyone now relates to East London. That's the Blitz myth, basically, the Blitz spirit myth of that everyone was really happy and camaraderie was high. It wasn't. I can tell you that now. That is a myth. It's not true. I actually want to make a longer video on this because it's such an interesting concept. This is a quite strange article, but it's really, really useful. It actually links Blitz spirit to the 7/7 bombings, and it's by a man called Darren Kelsey, and He summarises it as the Blitz spirit is a popular story about the British public during the Second World War, uniting together with defiance and resilience to overcome the threat of invasion from Nazi Germany. Previous work has revised this wartime story as a propagandist construction of national identity and a popular memory. Therefore, this paper reviews the Blitz spirit as a myth. Let me give you some reasons as to why it was a myth. Crime rates went through the roof. And I don't mean crime as in like, oh my god, people were murdering. People did do that. One was a guy called Cummings. He was a RAF man and he was stationed in London, killed a bunch of women Jack the Ripper style. Thought he could get away with it because it's dark, there's bombed out buildings, no one really knows where they are, you got blackouts. He got caught because he actually dropped his gas mask and then they identified it. There were murders, but things like looting. I remember there's some tunnels outside London on the Kent coast called Ramsgate Tunnels, and it was a bomb shelter for the civilian population in the area, and because there's an airfield nearby, it was quite targeted by the Nazis. And there's one really iconic story, it wasn't iconic, I think it's iconic, I think it's cool, that the air sirens went off, everyone rushed into the tunnels to take shelter, but loads of people stayed up on the surface and looted the houses that were left unattended. Took out things like carpet, all the piping, copper, all that kind of stuff. And all the houses were bombed, but also had nothing left in them, so that's cool. Things like rationing crimes. People would go up to the grocer and go, I've got an extra coupon here. If you don't tell anyone, I'll give you some laundry detergent. And they would swap things. Things like rabbits were quite popular. Like people would like swap rabbits. There's an amazing article here on it. It talks about pigs quite a lot as well. Love that article. It's so much fun. Also, there was like a massive class difference. Think about the fact that everyone who is well off weren't in places like East London, they were in West London. Now, West London was still affected, but not to the same extent that East London was, and that therefore implies that the people who were poorer and couldn't afford to get their lives back together were the most affected, whereas people who were well off didn't have to do that. Do you get what I mean? Basically, classes were still incredibly divided because there was a massive economic difference in your situation during the war. You couldn't get shelter as easily in the East. It was just not great. East End was already a poor area, and it was just made worse by the war because everyone had no house and no money and nowhere to go. But yeah, this is more of a propaganda tool. The Blitz myth the Blitz spirit myth is a propaganda tool used by the media to basically say, look, we're cracking on, keep calm and carry on. We're gonna do well. That's all it was. But I agree. Thank you so much for that one. This one actually did piss me off. So Justin, I'm really sorry, but you're gonna get the end of my stick with this one. You're gonna get a little whack of my ruler. Joking, you're not allowed to do that anymore in schools. This is one of my favourite books in the world. It's The Five by Hallie Rubenhold, and it talks about the Jack the Ripper victims, but actually gives them names and stories. There's maybe like one chapter for each woman. It talks about the killing, but that's it. And it completely changed my way we look at historical crime, and crime to this day. It's just foundational for my studies. It's just changed perception of everything. It's like disgusting. This thing's been to Thailand with me. It's tabbed. It's got writing in it. It's even gone yellow because of... It's disgusting, but I absolutely love it. And what Justin has said, Hallie Rubenhold's The Five, it's unfair to women by denying fact they were sex workers. I'm going to be completely frank with you, that is just historically wrong. That's a wrong opinion. First of all, I hate how it's worded. I pulled exactly what that said from the comment. Sorry, Justin, you worded that rank. It's not unfair to women by calling them the wrong thing. It's actually fair that she's giving them the history and the names they deserve. She's telling their stories. And if we actually look back on what the word prostitute means, because that's what these women were called, in the modern day, prostitute means sex worker. But prostitute back then didn't mean sex worker. It meant something completely different. It was more of a woman who was unkept, a little bit lewd. She would be drunk. She would be destitute. Basically, a woman who didn't fit the fallen woman or the crazy cat lady or the word's not come to me, but you know when women don't have children and they're like, oh, she's a... fill in the word. Basically, she has no means in life and she's rather unkept and she's just not got a path in life. She's not got a husband. She's sleeping on the streets. That's a prostitute back in their days. It's an umbrella term. It means a lot of different things. And they were dubbed prostitutes because these women fit that. They were fallen women. They were undesirable. They didn't really have a good relationship with life, alcohol, men. A lot of them were kicked out of their housing. They didn't have good lives. They were not sex workers. They did not sell their bodies to survive in East London. They didn't do that. Only 2 of them did, and we have concrete evidence that Mary Jane Kelly, the 5th and final victim of what we call the canonical 5, actually did, and also Elizabeth Stride, the 3rd victim and the one who was caught in the double act. If you don't want to read the book, that's completely fine. It's quite a big book. I do recommend it. But there is this amazing website on Literary London that I will link, and it says, by investigating these women's lives, Ruben Holt has demonstrated there is no evidence to suggest that Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman and Catherine Eddowes were ever prostitutes. While Elizabeth Stride and Mary Jane Kelly had been prostitutes, there is no evidence to say that they were working at the time they were murdered. I'll give you a quick rundown of the women, and I will tell you what happened to them, because I think it's important that we educate ourselves on this, because there are so many tours where it's like, Jack the Ripper tour, come and see where these women were murdered. There's a really quite shit museum in Whitechapel where it's like the Jack the Ripper experience, and it's just rooms mocked up to look like Victorian rooms, and there's not really much in there. And it's quite jarring to walk past quite often, because I'm like, why are we monetizing off women's deaths? Like, this is so bizarre. Polly and Annie, I'm going to group them together because they have very similar lives. They had tragic childhoods, they married, and they had comfortable times as wives and mothers. That's what they wanted to do. But their marriages fell apart, and they couldn't handle the challenges of being women on the streets. And unfortunately, that led to their death. Alcohol had a lot to do with both their deaths. They just... Already, Victorian London was horrible to women. And then imagine that you've got your life's falling apart. You're going to be an easy target. Elizabeth, who was a sex worker, was a registered prostitute, because back in those days, you had to get checked due to STDs. It was a horrible, horrible act that basically just meant that men could go up and say to women, drop your trousers, I'm going to check you for STDs. It was absolutely horrible. And it put the blame on women for STDs rather than stopping elite men and businessmen from going around sleeping with women and causing other people to die. She was married though, but that broke down, and then prostitution took hold, and then obviously she was killed. Kate was like a travelling singer. She would go around, sing ballads, talk about what was going on in the local town. She'd write them as they travelled. Unfortunately, she was murdered. And then Mary did solicit on the streets, but she was not soliciting at the time of her murder. And unfortunately, yes, she also did die. Please read this article, because this isn't an unpopular opinion. This is actually just a wrong opinion. And I don't want my followers to seem silly because they haven't read a book. So if you don't want to read the book, please read the article. Thank you. For my final argument, we're heading back to my bread and butter World War II, and this one comes from Molly, and it says, the Battle of Stalingrad is a pivot on which the 20th century turns. I think this is such an interesting point of discussion, because of the fact that it's not worded as where the World War turns, is where the 20th century turns. And if we actually just ignore the fact that it talks about the Battle of Stalingrad, the fact that that Molly has gone, okay, we're actually seeing the 20th century as a whole change. We're seeing a dictatorship that's taken over much of Europe crumble. We're seeing the military capabilities of Russia. We're seeing how alliances are working out. We're seeing economic problems arise. It's insane. Like, I genuinely think that is an incredible take to have, because it doesn't harm anyone. And also, it's just I'm going to agree with you. That's a really interesting way to put it. Just to put it, to summarise what the Battle of Stalingrad was, it was one of the most horrendous battles of World War II. Obviously, at Barbarossa, where Hitler invaded the Soviet Union because he thought that was a great idea. He wanted to try and cull the Red Army, and that's obviously a horrendous idea. It goes horribly wrong. It turns to street fighting. It's just overall not very good. There's an estimated about 2 million men who die. It was Hitler's sign to retreat, but he said, fuck it, send all my men from the west to the east, we need more men there. And actually, what ended up happening is about 90,000 of them got taken as prisoner. So that's not fun. And also, yeah, you're literally sending men to die. That's not cool. So yeah, this more comes down to the issue of, do we see politics or battles as the turning point? And this is a debate I think could go on for, this is a proper like Reddit debate. I don't mean that in a horrible way. I mean, like, people could go on and talk about this. Was this a turning point in the 20th century? Because you can argue, yeah, this is where we see like the Soviet Union proper ramp up against, because obviously their treaty, the Pact of Steel, the Nazi-Soviet Pact has been pushed aside. They're dealing with the consequence of that. It's a point where we see the Nazis weaken and go, actually, they're not as strong as they thought they were, and this 1,000-year Reich isn't gonna actually happen. Around this point, we're having Operation Torch. The Allies are coming back to Europe. The US is ramping everything up. Yeah, this is the turning point. Maybe it could be the year or the timing is the turning point. Maybe not the specific battle, but you can pin a specific battle as to where things are going really wrong. This is the point when we see Hitler retreating in on himself. He's not coming out. He's not giving public appearances anymore. We can definitely say it's a pinpoint moment, and I think that's just so interesting to frame it as the 20th century, because the 20th century has so many turning points, and this is definitely one of them. It's the turning point for the Nazis, definitely. As soon as Barbarossa happens and he starts to go down this maniacal, we need to get rid of the Russians. Yeah, this is the point. I think that's such an interesting take. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been recording now for half an hour and I need to edit this, so thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the setup. Everything here comes from charity shops. My new background, my new house. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I'm sorry if I've upset anyone, and I'm sorry if any of you want to unfollow. I can't lie with historical facts. Also, this is supposed to be light-hearted, so please don't take any of this to heart. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been very fun to do and research. There will be an accompanying article where I will also have many, many more historical unpopular opinions that I will be putting all on my Patreon and Substack. Please do subscribe. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on all my article pages. It really, really helps. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.